phone down. Step away from the turnstile. You've been ordered to leave.
Officer, I work here. I'm the managing partner on the 40th floor. Verify it.
I don't care who you say you are. You're trespassing.
Touch me and you violate my Fourth Amendment rights.
Turn around. Now.
Careful. You're making a mistake.
Hands behind your back. Let's go.
Officer Brody Caldwell had been patrolling the streets of Chicago for 6 years when he walked into a situation that would not only obliterate his career, but cost the city of Chicago a staggering $6.8 million. He was 34 years old, a man who prided himself on his street instincts, believing he could spot trouble before it happened. But what he called instincts, the Internal Affairs Division would later label as deep-seated systemic bias. On a crisp Tuesday morning in October, Caldwell received a dispatch call regarding a disturbance at the Obsidian Tower, one of the city's most prestigious commercial addresses. The call came from a security guard reporting a belligerent male refusing to leave the premises. The male in question was Marcus Sterling, a 54-year-old legal titan who wasn't just a tenant in the building, he was the managing partner of Sterling Vance & Associates, the powerhouse law firm that occupied the top 4 floors. What Caldwell did next, ignoring Sterling's bespoke 3-piece suit, dismissing his calm demeanor, and arresting him in the lobby of the very building his firm anchored, would become a definitive case study in how unchecked arrogance and racial profiling can bring down an entire precinct. Before we dive into the details of this catastrophic failure of judgment, I want to ask, where are you tuning in from today? If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. We are dedicated to exposing the truth behind the badges and ensuring these stories are not swept under the rug. Your support helps us keep the spotlight where it belongs on accountability. The Obsidian Tower stands as a monolith of glass and steel in the heart of the Loop. It is a fortress of commerce housing hedge funds, tech consultants, and at its pinnacle, the law firm of Sterling Vance & Associates. It was 8:45 a.m. The morning sun was reflecting off the glass facade, and the lobby was a hive of activity. Executives in Italian wool coats, paralegals balancing trays of coffee, and couriers rushing toward the elevators. It was the kind of environment where money wasn't just made, it was protected. Marcus Sterling had arrived at 8:40 a.m., dropped off by his driver. He was a man of immense stature, not just physically at 6'2", but in presence. He had spent 30 years building a reputation as one of the sharpest corporate litigators in the Midwest. He had clerked for the Supreme Court in his 20s, made partner at a white shoe firm in his 30s, and founded his own empire in his 40s. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man who knew the law better than the people who wrote it. He was wearing a navy blue bespoke suit from Savile Row, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie. He looked every inch the captain of industry that he was. However, that morning, Marcus Sterling had made a rare mundane error. In his rush to prepare for a deposition involving a Fortune 500 merger, he had left his wallet and building access card on his mahogany desk upstairs the night before. He realized it the moment he stepped into the revolving doors. It shouldn't have been a problem. The regular morning security team knew him by name. They would usually wave him through with a smile and a, "Good morning, Mr. Sterling." But the regular team wasn't there. Instead, the console was manned by Greg Miller, a 28-year-old hire who had been on the job for less than 3 weeks. Miller was eager, rigid, and possessed a dangerous combination of insecurity and authority. When Sterling approached the turnstile and explained he'd forgotten his pass, Miller didn't see a managing partner. He saw a black man trying to bypass security in a high-value target building. "I need you to step back, sir," Miller had said, his hand hovering over his radio. "I'm Marcus Sterling. My firm is on the 40th floor. If you check your roster or call my executive assistant, Sarah, she can verify this in 10 seconds. Sterling replied. His voice calmed the baritone of a man used to being listened to. Miller shook his head. "I don't have time to make calls for everyone who walks in off the street claiming they own the place. No ID, no entry. You need to leave." Sterling didn't leave. He stepped to the side, pulling out his phone to call Sarah himself. To Miller, this wasn't a tenant solving a problem. It was a trespasser defying an order. Miller keyed his radio and then dialed 911. I have an unauthorized male African American refusing to vacate the lobby. He's becoming aggressive. The word aggressive is often the match that lights the fuse. In reality, Sterling was standing 5 feet away from the desk, scrolling through his contacts, waiting for his assistant to pick up. But the dispatch went out, disturbance. Unwanted subject, refusing to leave. Officer Brody Caldwell was 2 blocks away when the call cracked over his radio. Officer Caldwell had a reputation in the district, and it wasn't one that inspired confidence in community relations. In his 6 years on the force, he had accrued 9 complaints. Most followed a similar trajectory: immediate escalation, rude and demeaning language, and a tendency to detain people who didn't look right in affluent neighborhoods. His record contained allegations of unlawful stops and excessive force, but like so many others, they had been dismissed or deemed unfounded by a system designed to protect its own. He was the type of officer who viewed the world through a binary lens, sheep and wolves. And in his mind, he was the sheepdog, the thin blue line separating order from chaos. When Caldwell heard the dispatch, Obsidian Tower male refusing to leave, his mind immediately painted a picture. He wasn't envisioning a corporate lawyer. He was picturing a vagrant, perhaps someone mentally ill, someone causing a scene in a place where decorum was currency. He hit his lights and sirens for a brief moment to cut through the intersection, parking his squad car aggressively at the curb, the tires screeching slightly, a display of dominance before he even opened the door. He walked into the lobby with his thumbs hooked into his vest, his chin up, scanning the room, not for information, but for a target. The lobby was expansive with high ceilings and marble floors that echoed every footstep. He bypassed the security desk, ignoring Greg Miller, who was pointing frantically, and zeroed in on the only black man standing near the turnstiles. Sterling was on the phone, his back partially turned to the entrance. "Sarah, I'm stuck in the lobby. The new guard won't let me up. Can you come down?" Sterling was saying. Caldwell didn't wait for Sterling to finish his call. He didn't approach to ask questions. He approached to give orders. He closed the distance in long, heavy strides, his presence sucking the air out of the immediate vicinity. "Phone down. Now!" Caldwell barked, his voice booming across the polished stone. Sterling turned slowly, lowering the phone but not ending the call. He looked at the officer, his expression one of confusion rather than fear. "Excuse me," Sterling asked. "I said put the phone down and step away from the secure area. You've been asked to leave." Sterling looked at the phone where Sarah was still on the line and then back at the officer. "Officer, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I work here. I'm the managing partner of Sterling Vance and Associates. I simply forgot my key card." It was a reasonable explanation. It was the truth. But to Officer Caldwell, it sounded like a lie he'd heard 1,000 times. In his experience, people who belonged in towers like this didn't get the cops called on them. Therefore, the man in front of him was lying. "I don't care who you say you are," Caldwell snapped, stepping into Sterling's personal space, a tactic taught to intimidate. "The property manager wants you gone. That means you're trespassing. Walk out that door or you're going out in cuffs. Do you think police officers should be required to verify employment or residency before removing someone from a commercial lobby? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below." Sterling took a deep breath. He had argued cases before the Federal Court of Appeals. He had negotiated billion-dollar settlements. He knew that getting angry now would only serve the officer's narrative. He needed to be precise. He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. "I'm going to hand you my business card," Sterling said, broadcasting his movements. "It lists my office number. You can call the main switchboard." "Don't reach for anything," Caldwell yelled, his hand dropping to his holstered taser. He slapped Sterling's hand away as it emerged with a cream-colored cardstock. The card fluttered to the marble floor. "I didn't ask for your card. I gave you a lawful order. Leave. Now." The lobby had gone silent. The receptionist, the couriers, the other business people entering the building, everyone stopped. They were witnessing a scene that didn't make sense. A man in a $3,000 suit was being treated like a dangerous criminal. Officer, Sterling said, his voice hardening, losing the tone of polite conversation and adopting the steel of a courtroom cross-examination. You are making a mistake that is going to be very difficult to undo. I am not trespassing. I am a remarkably well-documented tenant of this building. If you touch me, you are violating my Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable seizure. I am asking you, as a citizen and a property owner, to verify my identity. Caldwell heard the legal jargon and his anger spiked. He hated jailhouse lawyers, people who thought they could talk their way out of an arrest. He didn't see the bespoke suit. He saw a challenge to his authority. He didn't hear a citation of the Constitution. He heard resistance. You want to talk law? Let's talk downtown, Caldwell sneered. Turn around. Sterling remained facing him. I am not resisting, but I am not leaving my own building. That was it. Caldwell decided the conversation was over. He lunged forward, grabbing Sterling by the shoulder. The force was unnecessary and aggressive. He spun the older man around. Sterling stumbled slightly but kept his footing. Caldwell didn't wait for him to stabilize. He shoved Sterling forward, slamming him chest first onto the high marble reception desk. The sound of the impact, a sickening thud of bone against stone, echoed through the lobby. Stop! A woman's voice screamed. It was Sarah Sterling's executive assistant who had just stepped out of the elevator. She ran across the lobby, her heels clicking frantically. What are you doing? That is Mr. Sterling. He owns the firm. Caldwell ignored her. He was in the zone now, the adrenaline of the physical confrontation taking over. He wrenched Sterling's right arm behind his back, twisting it to a painful angle. Stop resisting! Stop fighting! Caldwell shouted a command for the benefit of the witnesses and the body camera, despite the fact that Sterling was standing perfectly still, his cheek pressed against the cold marble. I am not resisting, Sterling said, his voice strained from the pressure on his chest, but clearly audible. I am complying under duress. Everyone here is a witness. Caldwell pulled the handcuffs from his belt. The metal ratcheted shut on Sterling's wrists. The officer tightened them, ensuring they bit into the skin, a petty move designed to assert dominance. He yanked Sterling off the desk and spun him around. Sterling's tie was askew, his suit jacket bunched up, his dignity assaulted, but his eyes were clear. He looked at Caldwell not with fear, but with a terrifying promise of retribution. You are arresting Marcus Sterling, Sarah yelled now, standing 3 feet away, holding up her own badge. He is the managing partner. You are making a huge mistake. Caldwell looked at Sarah, then back at Sterling. For a second, a flicker of doubt should have crossed his mind. The woman was professional. The man was well-dressed. The crowd was looking at him with horror, not relief. But Caldwell was too far in. To back down now would be to admit he was wrong, to admit he had lost control. And in Caldwell's world, you never admitted fault. Step back, ma'am, or you'll be joining him for obstruction, Caldwell threatened. He shoved Sterling toward the door. Let's go. As they walked the gauntlet of the lobby, Sterling saw 2 of his junior associates standing near the revolving doors, their mouths agape. They were young lawyers, fresh out of Harvard and Yale, terrified of the scene unfolding. Sterling locked eyes with them. Call Robert Vance. Sterling said, his voice calm and commanding. Tell him to meet me at the 1st District Precinct. Tell him to bring the civil rights complaint drafts, and tell him to save the security footage immediately. Caldwell shoved Sterling through the doors and out into the cool October air. Shut up, Caldwell muttered. You can tell your lawyer whatever you want when you get your phone call. Officer, Sterling said as they reached the squad car. I don't need a phone call to get a lawyer. I am the lawyer. And before this day is over, you're going to wish you had checked that business card. Caldwell pushed Sterling's head down and maneuvered him into the cramped back seat of the cruiser. The hard plastic seat was a stark contrast to the leather of Sterling's usual town car. Caldwell slammed the door, walked around to the driver's side, and got in. He felt a surge of triumph. He had removed the problem. He had cleared the call. The drive to the station was short, less than 10 minutes. Caldwell spent it typing on his dashboard computer, logging the arrest. Criminal trespass, resisting arrest, disorderly conduct. He was building the narrative that would justify the use of force. Sterling sat silently in the back, memorizing the badge number on the dashboard, the time of day, the route taken. He was already deposing the officer in his mind. When they arrived at the 1st District Precinct, Caldwell pulled Sterling out of the car and marched him through the back entrance, past the holding cells and into the processing area. This was Caldwell's turf. The smells of stale coffee and floor wax were familiar comforts. He guided Sterling to the booking desk where the watch commander, Sergeant Thomas O'Malley, was reviewing paperwork. O'Malley was 58 years old, a veteran who was counting the days to retirement. He had seen it all. He looked up as Caldwell approached with his prisoner. "What do we have, Caldwell?" O'Malley asked, rubbing his tired eyes. "Trespassing at the Obsidian Tower. Refused to leave. Got physical," Caldwell said, tossing Sterling's wallet, which he had confiscated during a pat-down before the car ride, onto the counter. "Says he's a lawyer." O'Malley's eyes drifted from the wallet to the man standing in handcuffs. He took in the suit, the face, the posture, and then recognition hit him like a physical blow. O'Malley froze. He knew that face. He had seen that face on the news 3 months ago, when the city lost a class-action lawsuit regarding zoning discrimination. That face had been across the aisle, decimating the city attorney's arguments with surgical precision. "Caldwell," O'Malley said, his voice dropping to a whisper that screamed of danger. "Do you know who this is?" "Some guy named Sterling. Claimed he owned the place." Caldwell shrugged, oblivious to the change in atmospheric pressure in the room. O'Malley stood up slowly. "Unlock those cuffs. Now." "Sarge, he was resisting. I have to process—" "I said—" O'Malley roared, his face turning a deep shade of crimson. "Take the damn cuffs off him right now." Caldwell flinched. He had never heard the sergeant yell like that. Confused, he reached for his key and unlocked the handcuffs. Sterling rubbed his wrists where red welts had already formed. He adjusted his cufflinks, straightened his jacket, and looked at O'Malley. "Sergeant O'Malley," Sterling said coolly, "we met at the Faux P deposition last year." "Mr. Sterling," O'Malley said, coming around the desk, I apologize. There has obviously been a massive communication failure." "There was no failure of communication," Sterling corrected him. "I communicated my identity. I communicated my ownership of the property. I communicated my legal standing. Officer Caldwell simply chose not to listen because I didn't fit his profile of a managing partner." Caldwell stood there, the realization slowly seeping in like ice water into his veins. The managing partner. The man who sued the city and won. "Officer Caldwell." O'Malley turned to his subordinate, his eyes filled with a mixture of rage and pity. "You arrested Marcus Sterling, of Sterling, Vance and Associates, for trespassing, in his own building." The guard said—" Caldwell stammered, his bravado evaporating instantly. "The guard," Sterling interjected. "You mean the untrained employee whose word you took over the man with the executive assistant and the offer of proof you didn't investigate, officer. You profiled. And then you assaulted me." The precinct captain appeared in the doorway, drawn by the shouting. Within minutes, the situation unraveled for Caldwell with terrifying speed. Sterling refused to leave the station until a formal complaint was lodged and photographed. His partner, Robert Vance, arrived 20 minutes later, not with a bail bondsman, but with a team of 3 other attorneys and a videographer to document the injuries. The fallout was swift, brutal, and public. By the time the sun set that Tuesday, the body cam footage had been pulled by the captain. It showed exactly what Sterling had said, a calm professional offering identification and an aggressive officer escalating immediately to violence. The lawsuit was filed on Friday. It named Officer Brody Caldwell, the security firm, and the city of Chicago. The claims were irrefutable: false arrest, excessive force battery, and civil rights violations. But the most damaging part for the city was the discovery phase. Sterling's firm dug into Caldwell's history. They found the 9 previous complaints. They found the pattern of stops. They found the supervisors who had signed off on retraining that never happened. The city knew they couldn't go to trial. Marcus Sterling cross-examining Brody Caldwell on a witness stand would be a massacre. It would be televised. It would be a public relations nightmare that could spark unrest. They settled. $6.8 million. It was one of the largest individual settlements for a wrongful arrest in the city's history. But Sterling didn't keep the money. He donated the entire post-legal fee amount to a legal defense fund for indigent defendants who had been victims of racial profiling but lacked the resources to fight back. Brody Caldwell was fired 3 months later. The review board found that he had violated multiple department policies, including failure to investigate de-escalation failures and use of excessive force. He was decertified, meaning he could never work as a police officer in the state again. Greg Miller, the security guard, was terminated the same day of the incident. The security company lost the contract with Obsidian Tower, a contract worth millions. But the money and the firings were just the mechanics of justice. The true weight of the story lies in what Sterling said during a press conference following the settlement. He stood at a podium, the same composure he had shown in the lobby, but this time the world was listening. "I was lucky," Sterling said, looking into the cameras. "I have a law degree. I have partners. I have wealth. I could survive this. But when that officer looked at me, he didn't see any of that. He saw a stereotype. He saw a threat where there was none. And if he can do that to me in a bespoke suit in the lobby of my own building, imagine what he does to a young man in a hoodie on a dark street corner who has no one to call. That is why we fought. Not for the money, but to force the system to see us." This story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Credentials, success, and attire are often no shield against bias. When the badge assumes the worst before a single word is spoken, justice is dead on arrival. What do you think needs to change to prevent officers from making these snap judgments? Should officers carry personal liability insurance for misconduct lawsuits? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe these stories of accountability are important, please like this video and share it. It helps us continue our work. Thank you for watching, and stay safe out there.